All right.
What's good
over there? So how long have you been an undercover police officer?
Absolutely. Do you know how fast you were going? You do know why I'm pulling you over, ma'am. I need your license and registration.
Makes it hard to buy drugs in San Francisco, though, doesn't it?
I took the police officer test when I was 18 with my brother Josh, and we both passed. And I was going to go into the police academy with him in New York City. I decided to go to night school and fix laser printers during the day. Then I graduated, and I thought, I want to be in the FBI. And so I was going to go for my master's in criminal justice at John Jay, and I had the FBI application. And then I saw the internet, and I was like, that's going to be fucking huge. I want to do that.
Yeah.
So
little did you know.
Right now, I would be Clarice Sterling in Silence of the Lambs.
It puts the lotion in the basket. Did you also see how much those guys make, unfortunately?
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Clarice, who is this man you seek? What does he covet?
That adds to your creep factor. Big time.
Have the lamb stopped crying?
But your dad actually had a run-in with the feds when you were younger. That kind of... Did that not turn you off from law enforcement?
Well, all my friends I grew up with are cops or firemen. And I could tell you 100 different insane stories. But we're recording this, so I can't.
Yeah, we are.
But there were some pretty crazy stories. I'll leave it at that.
All right. But your dad owned a bar, and one day...
Are we starting?
Yeah, this is it, man.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Remember that time when I was like,
talking
hey,
to bring
record?
everybody over here?
Yeah, no, we're doing it.
Okay, it's on.
No
Okay,
warnings.
we'll get you to intro. Are you going to intro the show?
Nope.
Or you just start?
I do it later. Yeah, when you're not.
Later,
I want to
okay.
spare you that time.
That time, okay.
Yeah.
Hey, well, thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
Okay.
So anyway, back to your dad getting almost arrested by the feds while you were at home. Because I wonder, when you told that story in the book Angel, which is available here if you ask a good question and not available if you ask a bad question after this, you tell that story where you're just sitting at home one day and it's like you get raided by the FBI. I'm surprised that made you want to maybe join them later.
Yeah, that's paging Dr. Freud. Well, when I was a kid, my dad was an entrepreneur. And obviously, I looked up to him a lot. And if you find any entrepreneur, you can point to a pretty interesting relationship with their father in almost every case. And so I had a complicated relationship with my dad. It's good now. But in 1987, the stock market crashed. And I was 16 or 17 years old. I was about to go to school. And the feds came, the taxes. My dad didn't pay his taxes for a little while, and the feds don't take kindly to that. And so they took his bar with shotguns and everything, locked it up. And my dad, who was kind of broken at that point, just said to me, I'm sorry, son, I don't have any money for college. I said, okay. And so then I just went to school, and I said, can I join the night program? And they're like, okay. So I switched to the night program, and I was 18 years old, going to school with the continuing education folks. I was in school with 30 and 40-year-olds. And I worked during the day at 3 different jobs, fixing laser printers, a bar back, which has anybody ever been a bar back or know what that is? Who knows what a bar back is? Yeah, so who's ever done it? Raise your hand if you've been a bar back. It's the worst job in the world. Your job is to do all the shit the bartenders don't want to do and get paid 10% of the cup at the end of the night, of the tips. So basically you spend your life carrying boxes of beer, and I used to put 2 buckets of ice on either side, which is how I got this incredible physique. 20 years later. But I would just be carrying ice, and then you got to take these Coors Lights and put them in the ice, and your hands are ripped up. And back then, people were allowed to smoke in restaurants and bars. And so you would get home, and you just like, oh my God, you just have this like layer of sweat and smoke on you. It's just horrible.
It's like what we all had this morning after the campfire.
It was very similar to that, actually. But that was a big defining experience for me, because I said to myself, I will never fail.
You will never fail?
Fail. Because I saw my dad fail, and I said, I'm going to avoid that. And then fast forward, it was 1999, 2000. I'm on top of the world. I've got the Silicon Valley Reporter magazine, which was my first
Wait a minute. Did you see your dad as a failed business owner or a failed entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think when the feds come and take your business and you almost go to jail and you have a $100,000 tax bill, that would be pretty clearly defined as failure.
I mean, perspective. I agree with you, but some people might not see the same.
I mean, looking back on it, at the time it wasn't like at the time I was mad about it or resentful. It was more like being in shock. When you're 17 years old and you see something traumatic like that happen, it's kind of like getting, just punched in the face. You don't feel the pain at first. You're just looking at the ceiling going, what just happened? Anybody ever get punched in the face and get knocked out? Keep your hand up if you got knocked out.
If not, stick around after the show.
So if you haven't been knocked out yet, look at the person next to you and punch him square in the face. It's literally, I've been knocked out in my life. I've been punched a couple of times, and I grew up in Brooklyn. Like, it's part of growing up in Brooklyn. And
What happened to your accent, though?
it comes out when I'm mad. I mean,
Okay.
If I'm
Again, stick around for the rest of the show.
or
and you will hear
if I
that.
drink, it comes out.
All right.
But fast forward, and I had the Silicon Valley Reporter. I'm on top of the world. I'm 29 years old. I got 100 people working for me. We're doing $12.5 million in business or so. And I was covered in the New Yorker in a 5,000 or 6,000 word profile. I'm on Charlie Rose. I'm on 60 Minutes. I was on Bloomberg twice a week. And so I'm like, wow, I'm on top of the world. And I'm unstoppable. And somebody offered me $20 million for the magazine. And I was like, fuck you. I'm taking this to the moon. And then the dot-com crash happens.
It's on the moon where all the magazines are now.
Exactly. And he's good. He's good. And so then the stock market crashes, and the internet went from being like the hottest thing in the world to being a bunch of charlatans and con artists. And I had to have like a really deep look in the mirror and say, am I a charlatan or is this real? What just happened? And again, it's like getting punched in the face. So I'm sitting there going, oh my God, all the advertisers literally overnight went out of business. Or if they were in business, I called them and said, you owe me 50 grand in ads. And they're like, we have no money, Jason. We're just laying everybody off. And I'm like, okay. And we went literally from $12 million in revenue one year to 500,000 the next. I mean, this was
And this is gross. This is not like what you had left after paying everyone.
No. I mean, and so it was really brutal. And so I had to lay off like 80 people, and people cried. It was like a really trying experience. And I just thought to myself, fuck, I promised myself I would never fail. And now I'm on the precipice of failure because the stock market crashed.
Was that what you were thinking at the time, though?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It literally hit me like one day. I was like, oh my God, my dad got hit by the stock market crash. All the people who owed him money, who had tabs at the bar, didn't pay him. And all the people who owe me money for ads are not paying me. It was like literally some kind of Shakespearean.
Yeah, you're like, I'm a bar owner.
And
again.
nobody would pay their, exactly.
Right.
And I'm just like, oh, fuck. And then I said, you know what? I didn't get here by accident. I did something. I created this magazine off my credit cards. I built it. I have talent. And I remembered that 2 or 3 of my employees had left to do weblogs, blogs. And I was talking to one of them, Shenny Jardin, who was working at Boing Boing. You can give it a clap. You give it a snap. Give some snaps here if you like it. Okay, go. We'll snap it up. It's like a jazz club. And she was making a ton of money. I think they were chopping up like $6,000 or $7,000 a month each with the 4 or 5 partners. And then Rafat Ali, who worked for me at Paid Content, he came to me one day, this is before the magazine had crashed, and he said, I heard that you found out about paidcontent.org. Are you going to fire me? And I said, Rafat, sit down, son. Let me explain something to you. You need an editor. And in a blog, you have no editor. Blogs are childish and stupid. And you used .org. It's not even a .com. You can keep doing your blog on the weekends. I don't care. But honestly, it's a complete and utter waste of time. And then I saw Nick Denton, a friend of mine, had created Gawker. And I was like, wait a second. 3 of the people I really respect, 2 of which worked for me, are now making $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month. This blogging thing has legs. And it turns out certain people do need to have their work edited. But the most elite people, like Om Malik or Peter Rojas, they're doing better work if they're not edited. And so I said, oh, I'm wrong.
Why is that? Speed?
It's speed, and then the people who were managers in between them would fuck up their work by editing it or taking out the edges. And it was better to be more authentic. It's like, yeah, Bob Dylan gets up here, he takes out his guitar, he plays a song. And then you put him through a studio and you have somebody like, auto-tune his voice. It's like it kills it, right? So that's what people were doing. They were taking raw talent and they were muting them and saying, don't say that, this is a little too rough, too opinionated. And what was refreshing about blogs in the 2000s was that you had this like honesty and authenticity that came out. So I was like, that's going to be a thing. So I built Weblogs Inc. And 18 months after we were growing it, we were at about $150K in total revenue. And AOL came and offered us $30 million for it. And unlike the time when Alan Meckler offered me $20 for Silicon Reporter. I said, I'll take it.
You said $20?
20 million.
20. I heard $20. I was
Alan
like,
Meckler had offered me 20
offer.
million for
Yeah.
Silicon Valley Reporter, and I didn't take it. And I was like, you know what? I was negative 10,000 in my bank account. And I was walking my old dog Toro, rest in peace, and smoking a cigar with my wife. And we were sitting there in Santa Monica. We had a $2,000 a month apartment. And I said, they offered us $30 million. And I can't keep up with our credit card bills. I'm going to take it. And she's like, this is going to be crazy. Like, we're going to have over $10 million in our bank account. I was like, yep. And I sat there and I just had to have this like really long look on, like deep moment, because I had a very complicated relationship with money and being poor, because my parents, every fight they ever had in their life was over money.
It was about money, right? You grew up poor wanting to be rich.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be powerful and rich when I was a kid. And looking back on it, the reason I wanted to be powerful and rich was because I was poor and I had no power. And it was very complicated for me. And then the money transferred, and my wife remembers the story, and I remember the story like it was yesterday. I was sitting there refreshing my Bank of America account, the corporate account, and nothing. And then boom, 27 million bucks. And I start crying.
Sure.
And my wife goes, why are you crying? I said, I don't have to worry about money ever again.
Ever. You'd never have to work again.
It was so scary for me to be poor for so long that I just had this incredible cathartic release. And then I went to Silicon Valley, and when I started making noise up there, all these obnoxious rich people were like, I'm not in it for the money. You know, I do venture capital because I'm passionate about changing the world. I was like, fuck you. You have all the money. That's why you're saying it's not about the money. If it wasn't about the money, why are you raising these huge funds and taking these huge management fees? And like, it's obviously this is all about the money.
Sure. But that's not cool to say. You want to be a little bit more.
Everybody's a pretentious asshole and like, oh, it's not about the money.
Present company excluded.
It's obviously about the money, right? Like, that's why they call it money. Like, you need it to do things. And so it's not the be all end all, but I had a very complicated relationship where, and you know, when you make your first 10 million, it takes the edge off. Of course, I know it's obnoxious to say, but I can say without being obnoxious, I hope, because I spent the majority of my life broke.
How much of that is an understatement? This is taking the edge off. $20 million is not taking the edge off. That's real money. You never have to work again. You never have to do anything that other people don't want you to do ever again.
Yeah, it will fuck with your mind a bit if you don't have a stable foundation. I feel lucky because I grew up with a very stable foundation, and I've never really cared about the money in the sense of making a lot of it. What I cared about was not being poor. And then if you look at the psychological studies, they say once people they're like, oh, money can't buy happiness. And like all the statistical studies are like, poor people are really fucking unhappy. It's like, oh, shocking. Really?
Up to like
sucks to be poor.
Yeah.
And it's like, the number was 70,000. And I don't know if, you know, obviously by region it's going to be different, but when people get past $70,000 a year in income, they don't have this underlying anxiety.
Right. It starts to, what is that, exponentially taper off.
Of course, yeah, because
happiness.
The truth is, like, I have 4 Teslas. I drive one at a time. I can't drive 4 Teslas at once, and nor does it matter. And by the way, the one I drive is the cheapest one, the Model 3, because it's the best one, paradoxically. And if we all eat a hamburger, and Mark Cuban was here, and Elon was here, and I'm here, and you're here, and it's the same hamburger, and we all enjoy it equally. So 99% of the best things in life really are not correlated with capital. It's when you don't have it and you have that underlying fear and you can't take chances. And that's really where entrepreneurship comes in. Is the reason why I'm so passionate about being an angel investor and not like a VC, because I've been offered to work at, you know, call it 6 of the top 10 venture capital firms have offered me jobs. Or tried to recruit me. I like to work in the angel stage because, as you saw when we were doing the interaction, when I meet somebody like Janelle and I see winner, and I'm like, oh, that's exciting to me. Like, I know that person's going to win at something, and I need to be in business with them, and I want to win with them. So I had to, like, you know, you take stock of your life at different points, like when you fuck up or when you win. And I took stock of my life a couple of times, you know, in the past couple of years, and I was like, what do I love doing? I like winning, and I like supporting people who are changing the world. Okay, what's the best way to do that? Being an angel investor. And so now I've just organized my life around this premise of meeting founders, trying to figure out which ones are under-recognized, and being the person who writes the first check or the check when nobody else believes in them, because it's the most exciting check to write. And it's the smallest check, $25K, $250K, $1 million, compared to what my contemporaries do, which is write $25 million checks or $2.5 million checks. But I find it super exciting. I love the fact that I was the third investor in Uber or the second investor in Thumbtack. That to me is the exciting moment, to believe in it when nobody else does.
Do you get more excited about people or businesses?
Obviously people.
I mean, it's not necessarily obvious though, because a lot of people think they have to have an Uber on their hands in order to get your attention.
Here's the thing. In hindsight, everybody will believe in something that's changed the world. It's pretty obvious. Like, what people are very bad at is believing in something before it's changed the world. And so you have to change your thinking as an investor. What I think the reason I became very good at this is because of the fact that I'm a compulsive gambler. As anybody knows who types Calacanis Daniel Negreanu into YouTube and watches me play a $130,000 hand with the world's best reader, I beat him.
No big deal.
No big deal.
Nah.
No big deal. Okay. I tried not to drop into Trump.
That story would never have gotten told if you lost that hand.
No.
Not ever.
I lost a $100,000 hand with Pocket Kings versus Doyle Brunson, and that was painful.
Not bitter about it at all. Continue.
Not bitter at all. But to what were we talking about?
Yeah.
Risk, gambling.
No, definitely not that hand you lost.
Definitely not
that's in the past.
Definitely not the fourth edible that somebody just shoved down my throat over here.
I was wondering though if you bet on more about people or businesses, and you were
here's where I was going with that. You have to bet on people, and because even an entrepreneur who maybe builds the wrong product in the wrong market, they'll be smart enough and indefatigable enough, resilient enough to realize, oh, this didn't work. Yeah, let's make a couple of little adjustments, maybe a full pivot, and they'll figure it out. Now, once in a while, a dipshit team of idiots will be at the right place in the right time. Cryptocurrency,
for example.
Sorry. No offense to the crypto people, but there are some stupid people who just took down large sums of money. That's not the likely scenario most of the time. And you better
not
put that...
CoinSmart, who sponsored this conference, though.
Let me tell you.
Is not the case with them.
1,999 of these ICOs are complete, utter bullshit, but that one is the winner.
Yes.
Thank you for sponsoring the event. No.
Your check has cleared, CoinSmart.
Crypto is fascinating. We'll get into it. But that is like an outlier. So you have to look at the founder and you have to ask, is this person a winner? Are they going to win at life? Are they indefatigable? Will they give up or not? Because the reason businesses fail is not because they run out of money. That's what most people think is the reason they fail. It's because the founder gives up. I've seen many founders run out of capital and run on fumes for a month or two, tell everybody they're not getting paid, tell everybody to take side jobs, and then all of a sudden they raise the money 6 weeks later, 12 weeks later, and the business is still going. So I just look for those people, and sure, it helps if they're in a great market, but here's the thing, the really outlying successes in our business are the ones that define the market. So marketplaces and on-demand didn't exist as terms when we invested in Uber or other people invested in Airbnb. And I looked at Airbnb and I didn't have a chance to invest, but when I first heard it, I just thought, this is the stupidest idea I've ever heard.
Who wants cold cereal in someone else's couch?
Well, they were like, here's how it works. Somebody was explaining it to me who had invested. And they're like, okay, it's like couch surfing. So people have an extra room and you're going to Tokyo, you stay on their couch. And I'm like a serial killer's couch. I give the serial killer $50, I stay on their couch, and then I wake up and they're over me with a knife. I'm like, that's fucking crazy. And they're like, well, no, they have a reputation system. And I'm like, oh, a sociopathic serial killer is not going to be able to game their reputation. Right. Like, that's kind of what they do, is they kind of lull people. I mean, Jeffrey Dahmer, like, he's pretty good at getting people to come to his house and eat him. And then they were like,
not anymore, though.
Not anymore. They caught him eventually. But then on the other side, they're like, well, no, but you can host somebody and make money. And I'm like, so I could host a serial killer in my house who, when I'm asleep, will then break into my master bedroom and kill me.
Somebody grew up in Brooklyn. All right.
Right, but I had trust issues with that, and I was like, this is crazy. But what I didn't realize was what the founders realized, which was there was a group of people who this was appealing to, and it would expand. So I'm going to Tokyo because the book has just been translated on Friday, and I'm like, oh wow, there's a 9-bedroom modern home in Tokyo that I could rent and bring my entire team, and it's $1,000 a night. Wow, that's like $100 a room. This is an incredible deal. And I'm like considering using Airbnb. So where people start and where they end, and you have to suspend disbelief. And the way you can do that is you just make a long list of all the reasons why the startup will fail. So for the startups we saw today, I could give you the list of what VCs will say are the reason it's going to fail. And then you make a list of the reasons why it's going to succeed. And that might be a very short list. It's always shorter than the list of reasons it will fail. And then you take the list of the reasons it's going to fail and you rip it up and you throw it away and say, I believe in that person to go down that list and crush those issues. And here's what might go right. And if it's a 1 in 100 chance, but it pays off 1,000 to 1, you would take that. And that's where gambling comes in. I got into poker and I became a good poker player after years, and it takes a long time. But what you realize in poker is something called implied odds. So you and I are in a hand, and we're playing very deep stacks. You got $50,000. We got $50,000 in front of us each, and I got 7-8, and you've got aces. Should I pay $1,000 with 7-8? Well, that doesn't seem logical. But if I hit my straight, you're never going to see it coming, and you might shove your whole fucking stack in there, and that's the implied odds. So if I took a deck of cards out and I asked somebody in the audience, if I you give me $1,000. And if you pull the ace of spades, I'll give you 100,000. Most people would be like, well, that's stupid. There's only one ace of spades. But then if you realize it's 1 out of 52, which is about a 2% chance, you'd say, how many times can we do this bet? Can we do it 100? Can we do it 1,000? Because I am going to win in the long run. Our minds are not designed for that. Evolution has made us conservative, scared little creatures. Because if this was prehistoric times and we were going to go across that river, you'd be like, fuck, we don't know what's in the water. Could be an alligator. I'm not going across the river. But on the other side of the river might be all the apples. And somebody took the chance and went over there. With startups, it's not life and death anymore. So you should take the risk. But people's brains are wired. We're all still wired to be scared little monkeys. We're just terrified of taking risk. You have to rewire your brain to be a great investor and to be a great founder. Say, fuck it, I'm taking the risk. It's a 1% chance. But it's a 1% chance at making $1 billion or changing the world. Those are calculated risks that are worth taking, but your brain has a very hard time with making them. That's why East Coast VCs are so bad at the game and West Coast VCs are so good at it.
Burn.
East Coast VCs, well, listen, East Coast has better rap music, Biggie forever, Jay-Z. West Coast, some good stuff out there, but it's nowhere near East Coast rap. But on the VC side,
Snoop Dogg.
What happens, Snoop Dogg, Biggie, Jay-Z, like, no comparison.
This went down. This took a dark turn.
But anyway, somebody's going to get shot.
Yeah, not it.
But the VCs on the East Coast have never hit a $100 billion company. The VCs on the East Coast generally haven't had these kind of crazy success, nor do they know people who've had crazy success. On the West Coast, people are like, that's a fucking crazy idea. Let's do it. And then on the East Coast, they're like, that's a crazy idea. Can I have a 6x liquidation preference? And I want to have 2 board seats and you get 1. And they're just playing because they're scared.
And your slides need work.
Yeah, and your slides, well, it's bullshit. Like, if you're a VC, you're supposed to take risk. You're supposed to take crazy bets. So anyway.
Well, you mentioned the number one reason startups fail is not funding, et cetera. It's that the founder gives up. How do you know, well, of course you don't in advance, what are you looking for to find a founder who might give up? So if we're sitting here in front of all these people, what do you look for? That guy, she is going to give up. He's going to give up. What are you looking for? Or what is it in their office that you see?
Look in their eyes.
Oh, come on. There's more than that. There's more than that.
It may seem like that I'm bullshitting right now, but I look in people's eyes, and while they're talking, I can tell, and it might be from poker, if they actually believe what they're saying.
Okay, so if they're full of crap, fine, they'll probably give up.
Yeah, and I'm looking for somebody who's delusional with skill.
That's what you want.
Yeah.
You want delusional with skill.
Absolutely. Like, I am going to create a rocket ship company. Like, really? Tell me more. Well, I'm going to Russia, and I'm going to look at how they make rockets, and then I'll come back and make my own. And there's, and when I heard I knew Elon before SpaceX and before Tesla. When I heard him talk about it, it's very clear to me that he's indefatigable. He doesn't get tired. He's got the stamina of, 100 people, and he's going to win because he'll never give up. And if you look, like the shorts are like 30% of the stock available to be shorted has been shorted, and they are spreading false information and attacking him while he's standing in front of a huge dam trying to hold back global warming.
With a joint in his mouth, apparently.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, there's about 8 people with a joint in their mouth out here. Who gives a shit? Like,
who's got a joint for Jay?
Actually, I kind of feel if you
kind of feeling a joint right now, aren't you?
I kind of feel like we need to Joe Rogan this right now.
I mean, look, half of these people came from a joint rolling workshop earlier today. I'm just saying, I'm drinking a beer, you got coffee.
I taught the advanced class for the people in the advanced class. Very well done. I taught everybody in the advanced class. Yes, he was my top student, and I taught him how to do it with one hand.
Yeah.
It was good. You got that. Put the wrist into it. Actually, I'm kind of stoked if Elon's smoking a little weed because we'll get to calm down a little bit and get some sleep. Putting that aside, you're going to face a lot of criticism and hate if you want to change the world or do great things, sometimes from the people closest to you. And you'll have to learn that there are like different categories of people in the world. There's people who change the world and do interesting things. And then there's the people who criticize them. And anybody ever see the movie Ratatouille? Who's seen Ratatouille? Yes. So Anton Ego, who is the famous reviewer, at the end of the movie, he says, the life of the critic is pretty meaningless at the end of the day. But the one thing the critic can do is support the new. And he has this incredible realization that not everybody can be a great chef, but a great chef can come from anywhere. And that's the ratatouille. And he realizes that when he eats that incredible ratatouille, that reminds him of his mother's, and the tear comes down. It's like the greatest scene in any Pixar film ever. And when I talked to Ed Catmull from Pixar on my podcast, the guy who wrote the book Creativity, I was like, was that a fuck you from Pixar and Steve Jobs to the critics? He's like, yep. Great. Next question. What you have to realize is, like, the critics achieve nothing in their lives. Like, who's your favorite critic? Yeah. Yell out their name. Okay. Ebert, right, yeah. And the reason we loved Ebert was because he was a fucking fan of film, and he loved it, and he loved people who took risks, and he loved the new. And I know this because when I was coming up, when we were doing Weblogs Inc., we started blogging Sundance. I went to Sundance. I scammed my way into getting a press pass. And I would go, and I was like, oh my God, there's Roger Ebert hanging out at the Yarrow in the press screenings with 6 people at the table. And I walked by, and I made eye contact with him, and he said, join us. I shit you not, this is a true story. And I sat down, and we were waiting for the next movie, and Roger Ebert with all the young reviewers and press people just talking movies. That guy was just passionate about it. It was like the only critic I ever met. Walt Mossberg would be the other one that would come to my mind. But generally, they don't really support the industry. So as a founder, you got back to like, how do you pick? I like to look at the craftsmanship and the detail work. So when I talked to Travis about Uber and he was showing it to me, and he's like, hey, will you invest in my company? I was like, sure. And he's like, well, you want to know what it is? I was like, nope, I want to invest in you. And then he's like, well, let me show you. And he shows it to me. And he says, it's Uber Taxi. And there were 2 taxis in San Francisco at the time. And the taxi was going down the road sideways. And I'm like, what is that guy, Tokyo drifting this shit? Like, why is it like that? He's like, oh, it's a really hard problem, Jason. Like the iPhone 3G just got GPS and the car's coming down, but there's latency. And what we're going to do is we're going to make like 7 or 8 different versions of the car. And then we're going to have it, when we have certainty that it's going south, then we're going to flip it to show that view. But right now, I don't have a designer. I'm trying to get some money raised so I can get a designer to make this 2D. And I was like, oh my God. Like, he's thinking about that shit, right? Like, maniacal focus on details. And when I invested in Thumbtack, Marco's parents had invested, and I was the second investor, which I'll always never forgive myself for, because, like, I should have gotten there before his parents, but I'll put that aside right now.
I feel like it's a forgivable second place.
Not for me. Not for me. I'm always pushing myself.
Keep beating yourself up. Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
That's healthy.
But I was looking at it, and Thumbtack now has a very slick way to match you up with, a carpenter or a nanny or a piano teacher or whatever. But at the time, the first idea was a completely different idea. And the idea I invested in was, It was like a Yahoo directory of service providers.
Like
And
Angie's List or something
sort
like
of
that?
like Angie's
Okay.
List, but better, because what he did in it was you didn't have to pay. And when I was looking at the profile of this like painter, it had like 4 icons, and I was like, "What are those icons?" He's like, "Well, hover over them," and it said like address confirmed, insured, driver's license. I was like, "How do you get their address confirmed?" He's like, "Oh, that's great. We send them a postcard with a code on it. They type the code in, and we know that they got the postcard." I was like, "Oh fuck, that's genius," which is what Nextdoor stole from them, which is a really clever idea. I was like, "Why is it important that you know their address?" He's like, "Well, back to serial killers, I have a whole thesis on investing in companies around serial killers. We'll put that aside. That's the next book."
If you have a serial killer startup,
Yeah,
please
exactly.
stay
So anyway,
after the show.
he's like, "You ever like get somebody off Craigslist and you wonder, is this person going to rob or kill me?" I'm like, "Every time." And that's just in casual encounters.
Yeah.
Hey, joking.
Landed
Doesn't
that
exist
one.
anymore.
Oh, doesn't?
No.
It doesn't exist anymore?
I don't. Does casual encounters exist? See it? Busted.
Yeah, one person's
Busted.
like, I mean, maybe it does.
Yeah.
I think so. Maybe not.
Maybe. Let me check my phone.
Yeah, hang on.
Still exists. So anyway, I was like, wow, that's like a level of craftsmanship that is laudable. And so I look for those things. And, I'm talking a bunch now because I'm the subject of the interviews, but my team is always joking, like, it's really weird to be in a meeting with you, with the founder. And I'm like, why is that? It's like, because you don't talk. I'm like, oh, okay. Because I ask very short questions. What's that? Or why are you doing this? Or what are you working on? And I let them talk and talk and talk. And then eventually you can see that craftsmanship come out and that detail work come out. And if you see that detail work, you just think this person's paying attention to what matters, which is delighting customers, right? At the end of the day, startups have to delight some group of people, and they have to be scalable, and they have to have a great margin. It's unbelievable to me how many people don't realize that that's at the core of what we do. Is it delighting somebody? Does it make a profit each time people use it in some way? And can you scale it? A lot of people are just fucking around building features in like some vacuum, and they're afraid to charge for their product, and they're afraid to scale it, and they don't talk to their customers. And that's the kiss of death. Like, you really need to like talk to your customers and study how they use the product. The other example was calm.com, and I'm particularly proud of that investment that we made because at that time, nobody would invest in Alex, or very few people would. There were some, but people were writing like 25K checks. And when I met Alex, I had him on the podcast. You can look it up.
We'll link to it in the show notes.
Link to it in the show notes. And there was a moment where I was just like, how did you get the domain name calm.com? That's a 4-letter domain. It's $1 million domain name at least. He's like, oh, I pay much less. I'm like, $500,000? He's like, much less. I was like, under 100? He's like, yeah, something like that. Later told me, I think he paid $40,000 for it. I'm like, a 4-letter domain name in 2014, how the fuck can you get me, a 4-letter, can I get blue.com for 40 grand? Like, I'll take every 4-letter word in the dictionary for $40,000.
You can if you invest in my company, calm.com.
Exactly. It was kind of his response. And he had been written off a little bit as, and this is tremendously cynical, but he had done the $1 million homepage. Anybody remember $1 million homepage? Raise your
With
hand.
the pixels on it?
Yeah. So these are the old people. Those are Gen Xers.
Yeah.
Everybody else millennial. So what the $1 million homepage was Alex wanted to make $1 million. He was in college. So he said, I'm going to make a web page, and I'm going to sell each pixel on the web page for $1, and there'll be 1 million pixels. And so he announces this, and somebody buys their name, Jason, in 8-bit, and it cost them $400. And people are like, that guy's an idiot for buying Jason in the center of the $1 million homepage. And then 7 other online companies, because this thing's in the press, put their names on it. And then all the other e-commerce companies are like, well, I need to be on that.
Yeah, we got to be on this.
Right. And then since everybody's going there to see who's putting the bigger things in there, it becomes a competition. So now people are putting $10,000 items or $50,000 items. Like, that guy's an idiot. And then all of a sudden the page is sold out and he makes $1 million and he sweeps it. Whoop, zip, zip, zip. And I'm like, a cynic would look at that and go, oh, well, that guy's a charlatan, hustler,
shyster.
one-trick pony. And I looked at it and said, that person's a brilliant marketer. It's the most efficient way to make $1 million. What else can he do? And it was calm.com. It was meditation. And I thought to myself, okay, I've been talking to him for months. He can't raise money. But he's special, clearly. And the signals are going off, like with Janelle earlier where I said winner, winner, winner. Like, that was going off like even brighter, like, and invest. And so I see that and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it. Fuck it. Got to make a bet once in a while. Sometimes you got to play 7-8 suited. Let's see what happens. It's worked for me in the past.
If you don't know what that means, don't gamble.
Don't gamble. I'll tell a good story about that later. When I was a bad poker player and I realized this lesson. Anyway, putting it aside, I said, okay, I'm going to run it through this new thing because my friend Naval told me about syndicates and I started one. And there's like a bunch of people who want to invest alongside me. So 60 of us put $378,000 into the company. It was worth $5 million at the time. And somebody posted on Quora, will Jason lose $400,000 investing in a meditation app? And I wrote a long defense of my investment. And I said, listen, Phil Jackson is doing meditation with Kobe and Shaq. My friend Sam Harris is studying meditation and CAT scans at UCLA. And they've started this mindfulness center. That's UCLA. That's Phil Jackson. Like, this can't be not real. And if you think about it, yoga became this huge tradition in America where, like, if you go to Boise, Idaho, the Motel 8 has a yoga class. But like in the 70s, there were like 4 yoga classes a week in America, all in Santa Monica on donation base. So again, suspending disbelief and saying, what's the 1 in 1,000 chances it does work? What would it look like? And then I had this crazy realization. Yoga, you need to go to a studio to do. But meditation, you close your eyes and you listen and concentrate. And you could deliver it on this phone. And I said, how much is a meditation class? He said, most people donate. They do a donation. I'm like, where can you do it? He's like, I could tell you some people who do it, but there's not really many meditation places 4 years ago. I said, how much does it cost? He says, well, it's usually donation-based, and most people would suggest a donation would be $20. I'm like, how much are we charging? He's like, $10 a year. I'm like,
$10 a year.
A year. I was like, why don't we make it $10 a month? He's like, do you think we should do that? We've been thinking about that. And I was like, yeah, I think so. So they make it $10 a month, and the sales go like this. And I was like, wait a second, you charge 10 times more, and it grew faster. Oh, perceived value.
Right.
And then subscriptions came out, and they just closed around at 200.
Subscriptions on the phone.
On the phone and other places,
Recurring
reoccurring.
billing.
So now he's getting, the last round was $250 million. Somebody offered us $16 million for our 400K position. I sold 10% of it, took a quick little tasty poo. Did insurance, gave all our investors a 3.5x return or so. And then we have 90% riding. And
what does that mean?
Okay, so there's something called secondary shares. Sometimes somebody like Masayoshi-san wants to buy some of Uber. So they give people who are early investors in Uber the ability to sell some shares at a $50 billion valuation. So the new investor said, we'll buy some of these shares at $250 million, which if you bought in at 5, that's 50x, 30, 40, 50x. You might want to sell some and then let the rest ride. The company's probably worth 500 now, and they're doing, the rumor is they're doing 70, 80 million a year, which will probably make it our 7th unicorn, hopefully. But what I'm proud of is it was a very non-obvious investment until it wasn't. But my entire thesis was Alex, a person who the rest of the world didn't appreciate for greatness. And I think he's one of the 10 best product people in our industry ever. I'm like, I'll put him up there with Steve Jobs and Elon and, other really, Evan Williams from Twitter and Medium, yeah. And then Evan Spiegel from Snapchat. These were like really great product minds. I put Alex right up there and maybe in front of some of those names, actually. I think he's going to build a $10 billion business. And that's when you're sitting there and you reflect on your life, which now I'm 47, which I do think about sometimes, like how many years I got left. I go, you know what? That makes me feel pretty fucking good that this business might not exist if I didn't write that check. It makes me feel really fucking good that I'm going to make $50 million off of it too.
Yeah, I can imagine how that would feel. And I will only ever imagine how that would feel.
You could feel it. You could feel it. You could go to jasonsyndicate.com and join my syndicate and invest alongside me, and you might feel it. And it's funny because that was the first syndicate investment. It's the most successful of all time. And this guy emailed me, and he's like, I'm in your syndicate, and I've done 6 investments, and I want to know, I have a very simple question for you, Jason Calacanis. Are you a one-trick pony? The only thing you ever hit is Uber? And I was like, well, have you been reading the updates? Which 6 deals did you go? And he lists the deals, and like 2 or 3 of them are dead, and one of them was Calm, and one of them was another one. I was like, well, with Calm.com, did you read last month's update? He's like, no, I don't read the updates. I'm like, it's up 50x. He's like, well, I put 6,000 in. Does that mean I have like 30,000 now? No, I said 50, not 5. He's like, well, I have $300,000 now? I was like, yeah, you have $300,000 now. He's like, you're awesome, dude. Like,
and that's when you stopped answering your email.
Exactly. It's pretty funny, but yeah, of course. I mean, I had the opportunity to raise bigger funds or join bigger funds, and I kind of like being outside of the kind of venture capital complex because they make decisions with groupthink, and I think that's fine for what they do, growth stage, but if you want to really make decisions with very small amounts of information in your gut, it's very easy to talk yourself out of an investment. And I did that with Twitter. I talked myself out of investing in Twitter, and it was very painful for me because I was right about my thesis and I was wrong about the investment.
I would dive into that, but I want to speak to more founder ideals here. I have so many. I read this book this morning.
Thank you.
And yeah, I don't know why anyone's clapping for that, but I read that's why I was nowhere to be found this morning. I read this book this morning, and which, by the way, we're going to be giving these away. If you have questions after the show, I'm going to be aiming very carefully to land one of these.
Good question gets a book.
Good question gets a book. Bad question probably gets a book in the forehead. But I have so many questions from an investor perspective, but I think from a founder perspective, a lot of these guys and gals want to know, how do I know whether to take a meeting in the first place? Because there's a lot of angel investors now, especially with the popularity of books like this, where these guys are going to waste a lot of their time. And what they're thinking is, oh, it's an investor. I got to run to this meeting. I got to be there on time. I got to impress these people. You actually have, and correct me if I'm wrong, you are the bell of the ball here, not the investor. There's a lot of checks. They're all for the same amount. You're the ones that have the ideas that are going to be
I think that's important to realize because especially the venture capitalists later on, when they start investing, it's usually a very financial if you can get venture capital from one of the firms, you're probably going to be able to get it from all of the firms or the majority of the firms in that sector. So it becomes kind of like this weird dance where like you have 3 or 4 term sheets and you're picking one based on some track record or terms on the edges. And so what was the question?
No problem. I do that every day. How do they know when to take a meeting with an investor? Because a lot of investors are full of crap.
Yeah. So
present company excluded. That's the theme of the show, I think.
I said earlier during the pitch panel, like, listen, just do your backdoor references, like talk to other founders and they'll tell you the truth. If you talk to anybody I've invested in except for one company, it's going to be a stellar.
Can you go over that again? That was on a panel that's not going to be spliced into the audio file of this show.
So somebody was asking earlier, like, how do I know if this is a good VC for me? It's very simple. You look at their profile page on their website of their portfolio companies, and then you find 50 companies. Then you look at Crunchbase or another database, and you see they have 65 investments. Okay, who are the 15 companies they took off of their portfolio page and why? It's likely that they had some conflict with the founders. And the conflict could be the fault of the founders. It could be nobody's fault. It could be circumstance, whatever. So I would call those founders. And I can tell you the reverse works as well. Founders you can call and interview people who know the founder or work with them previously, and they're like, oh, that person's amazing, and everybody loves them, and that's probably going to be a failed investment. And then you meet another person who's like, oh, that guy's an asshole, and it's like, unicorn, here we go. I'm being slightly facetious, but sometimes founders are not they're cantankerous or they're hard to get along with. But for VCs, you'll find out very quickly if they're good at it. In terms of taking a meeting, you want to know what your goal is. So if you're raising an angel round, you should pick a time when you're going to meet with investors. You should make a list of the ones you want to target. You should reach out to them. You should be running a process. And after you raise money, then you should stop raising money and say, we're not raising money. We expect to be raising money in Q1 of 2019. We'd love to meet with you then. And then the power move I would do when I was an entrepreneur is to say, really don't have time for a meeting. We're executing against a pretty aggressive plan. If you want to come by for a quick coffee one morning, and you happen to be in Santa Monica, which was where I was located at the time, would love to have a quick cup of coffee with you, but I've got to hit these numbers. And they're like, yeah, we'll be there. Can we come tomorrow? It's like a real power move. Like,
Is it just me or does that sound like dating? Like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm really busy crushing it. So if you want to stop by for breakfast or before breakfast when I'm usually in the office, like 4:30 a.m. or so, I should be there.
Yeah, you can. I mean, yeah, I guess there's like the negging kind of thing. Like, I don't need money. But I was talking to a founder on the way up here. We were driving up last night. We stopped by a very charming little artisanal donut shop, Tim Hortons. It's if you go south of here and you make a right on
That's a
at the
unicorn
Shell,
if I've ever seen one.
This is, I think we met the guy, Tim. Great donuts. It's hard to, I'll give you the instructions later, but good coffee too. So I was talking to the founder, and when I met him, he had 5,000 revenue a month, came to our incubator, and now he got a term sheet from a notable firm, and he was in the process of meeting with maybe 10 folks. And then he went to 3 more meetings, and all 3 said yes. And I said, well, now you've learned the rule of raising money. When you're oversubscribed, everybody wants to invest. And when you don't have a lead, nobody wants to invest. These are all lemmings. Like once they see one firm come in, they all feel like it's validated. They want to compete for it. So here's the tip or the technique. If you want to raise $1.5 million, you go out to market and say, we're going to raise 750. And then in your documents, you say the minimum is 500, the maximum is 1.5. The deal will close if we raise as little as 500 and we can go up to as much as 1.5. And you want to go out and say, we have a 250K anchor investor, this person, Jason, whoever, and we have 500 open, we're looking for somebody else. And then things go very quickly. So I always advise people, either you're raising money or you're building your business. But you don't want to be doing those 2 things simultaneously because they really are both full-time jobs. And that's why having a co-founder is so powerful, because you can say, hey, you're going to run the business, and I am going to 60 hours a week communicate and prepare for this fundraising over 6 to 8 weeks.
This is like campaigning for office versus actually doing the job for which you were elected.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay.
Although some people are so good and talented.
A lot of people are saying
I was
they're
playing
the best.
golf and tremendous, under par, and won the presidency of Crooked Hillary. Very crooked.
Scary good impression.
Okay.
Cut close up on that one when
And
you edit the video.
we're building a wall, and we're going to block out the Canadians, and all the people in Canada, you're going to pay for it. Okay?
Trudeau's going to pay for it.
Trudeau's paying for the wall, okay? And he can't date Ivanka, okay? Hands off, Trudeau.
Too late, I think. 4 founder questions.
She's smitten.
Yes,
She's
I
smitten
think
with him.
so.
I love those photos of like Ivanka Trump's like. I mean, those are like Pulitzer Prize winning photos, as far as I'm concerned. And even if they're photoshopped, whoever
Yeah, who
photoshopped
cares?
that shit, it's brilliant.
Exactly. All right, 4 questions that you ask founders. These are must-ask questions from investors to founders. I would love to wrap with these because these can be reverse engineered by smart people like everybody who's out here right now. What are these questions? Why do we ask them? It's time for a commercial break.
The 4 questions.
It's a little bit towards the end, kind of in the middle, maybe 60% of the way
Let me
through the
make sure
book.
I get these exactly correct, because I have updated them to a certain extent. What chapter is that?
I don't take notes on which chapter it is because I read audiobooks. So I'm just going to let you flounder here.
Perfect. Here we go. The
front
4
of a
founder
crowd.
questions. Here we go. 131. Hold on a second. A reading from the book of Jason to the Corinthians. Dear Lord,
Love is cruel, love is kind.
so I always, the question 0 is if somebody's referred, I say, hey, how do you know Jane? If like, let's say Jane introduced us. And then it's a very short question, but I like to understand how the person was able to get the meeting. It's kind of an interesting question. What are you working on is my classic go-to, because it does 2 things for me. One, it shows that I'm very interested in it, but it also uses the word work, which is my like subtle way of conveying like this is going to be work.
You watch and see if they just recoil.
Yeah,
when you
what
say
are you
that
working
word.
on? And then some of them are like, what do you mean by that question? And then other ones are like, okay, well, we're built an application that is going to solve this problem, and it's going to help you get a taxi, and you're not going to have to wait. And they just, boom, they fucking run like a Mustang, boom, right up the hill. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for somebody when I just say, I fire the pistol, they can't shut up. And I'll ask that question, what are you working on? And literally 20 minutes later, they'll be like, that's what I'm working on. I'm like, wow, that's interesting. And I'm taking notes the whole time. Why are you doing this? Or why this is a really good question to ask, because maybe 1 out of 4 times I ask that question, the person says, because I want to make a lot of money. And I just think, oh, now you've just disqualified yourself. Like, there are much easier ways to make money than starting a company. 70, 80% chance of failure. If you really want to make money, figure out what the most in-demand skill is, go acquire it, and then go work for Google for $1 million a year. Like, okay, you know how to do cryptocurrency? Great. There is a million places for you to go get $1 million to work on cryptocurrency. Oh, augmented reality? Great. Get the developer kit for Magic Leap. Now you can make $500,000 a year. That's a much easier path. Making $1 million a year or $500,000 a year for your skill for 10 years guarantees you $5 to $10 million, and you get to hang out on the roof of Hooli drinking margaritas.
Sweet, unassigned.
Yeah. Why now is a question that I didn't come up with, but VCs are prone to ask. The why now question is very simple. Why will this work now? And the reason why YouTube worked when it did was because previously when you posted a viral video online, you had to pay to put it online. And then they would, if 1 million people watched it, your reward for 1 million people watching it would be you get a $40,000 bill. So people, I don't know if you remember this, like they put a video online, they'd share it, and then you go to the website and it would say, this person's account has been suspended because they hit their bandwidth limit. And what Chad Hurley realized was, wait a second, bandwidth is going down to 0 and storage is going down to 0 and cloud. So it's cloud computing was the reason. The other reason was syndication and blogs, which didn't get enough credit for YouTube's success, which was nobody ever, let alone giving away free video hosting and views. There was this other piece, which was embedded on your site. Yeah. So I'm not getting the credit on my site. You're not going to real networks. You're not going to ESPN and I'm putting ads around it. You're putting it on your site for free and you wrap it in ads? Holy fuck. Like that was crazy. And then Uber was obvious. It was like, well, this doesn't work unless the iPhone supports GPS because all the cool features of Uber are based on GPS in a phone, both for the driver and for Uber, a corporation, to be able to bill based on that GPS data and match drivers and for you to see the driver coming. So no GPS, no Uber, no cheap bandwidth and cheap storage and syndication of blogs, no YouTube. And you could ask this question about any business. Airbnb, I think, worked because of the reputation systems in social media. People got very used to reputation systems and trusting reviews on Amazon and on Facebook. And so when the social web kind of got released, that answered that question, is this person a serial killer or not? And so I think asking why now, critically important question. And what's your unfair advantage? This is a really good one. I asked it today to one of the companies, which is, hey, if you're going to build this cloud kitchens competitor, what is your advantage? If you're building this super delicious Japanese style flash chilled coffee cafe, flash reef roadie. Yeah. Vanilla
we'll link
caramel.
to it in the show notes. Don't worry about it.
Pretty delicious, this Japanese style coffee. This Miura? Am I pronouncing it correctly? I don't know.
Oh, he left. Such a
Sorry.
burn
Anyway,
on
it's
promoting your business.
What is his unfair advantage here? And, I took him aside because he got no votes. And I gave him a little pep talk. I was like, listen, you got no votes. You want to know why? And yeah. I said, okay. Number one, it's a consumer packaged good. And you're talking to venture investors. They don't invest in that category. So it makes sense that you would get 0 points.
Why not? It's too saturated or what?
Because it doesn't have venture economics typically.
Because the scale just can't be exciting.
Venture economics is in 7 years can get to 100 million and have an 80% margin. It's very hard to have an 80% margin in things other than marketplaces and software because of the cost of the goods.
You got to move that coffee all the way up to rural Canada.
But I had Dollar Shave
Where
Club.
the real money is.
Like literally the founder of Dollar Shave Club chased me down the street in Santa Monica and was like, you're Jason Calacanis. I said, yes. And he said, I have a company. I said, pitch me. He said, I'm going to get we're going to mail people razors. And I said, listen to me, kid. Razors? What's the new technology? He's like, well, they're not under the triple blade, like you use Gillette. That's not under patent anymore. So I could make it. And the next one's coming out of patent in 2 years. And I'll be able to make that one, the Quattro and the Cinco and everything. I was like, okay, good for you, kid. Let me explain something to you, kid. That's not a venture scale business. And boy, was I wrong because he had figured out something very important, which was subscriptions to a consumer-based good acquired cheaply online with an incredibly high margin with a very low mailing cost because they're not time sensitive. It doesn't have to be delivered in 2 days. You deliver 5 razors every month. It cost $1 to send them. But I was too stupid and I was thinking about what I know. And this is when I switched from being a good angel investor to being the best ever in the history of the world. Was I stopped trying to understand by who? Come on.
Present company excluded.
Exactly. No, the reason I can make that claim is because the 4 people who are better than it all call in rich now. They're all like, Chris Sacker's like, I'm rich. I'm not going back to work. Fucking meeting with founders all day.
Hanging out in cowboy shirts all day. I don't need a
He's just like, I'm done. It's like anybody who does well, the reward for doing well in investing is like, I don't want to do this. It's too hard to meet with founders constantly and deal with their struggles. I like it. But what we're talking about?
Talk about Dollar Shave Club.
So this is a $50 million mistake on my part. And the reason I was able to fix a leak in my game. So when you play poker, if you have good friends who play poker with you, they'll take you aside and say, listen, you have a leak in your game. Let me explain it to you. A leak in your game is one that's a leak that is making the money flow off of your stack into somebody else's. And the leak in my game was, I used to think, I had 2 really bad leaks. I used to think I could make this business work. Therefore, this founder is going to make it work. Well, I don't run the business. The founder does. So I invested in some kids and some folks who were dipshits and who didn't work hard and who weren't hustlers and who didn't want to make money. And I was like, this is so easy. Here's all you have to do to make this business win. Just do it. And they're like, yeah, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to do this. And I'm like, but that's not going to work. And you tried that for a year and it didn't work. They're like, yeah, we're going to just do that because we think that's a better thing. I'm just like, oh my God. And the second leak was, I tried to figure out if, the market would be there or not. And here's the thing. Like I said earlier, the best founders create the market. I didn't think that founders could manifest a market that didn't exist before. And then I had to think, oh, wait a second. When blogs came out, people didn't stop reading the New York Times. They started doing that as well. So sometimes the pie does get bigger. Sometimes it's zero-sum, sometimes the pie does get bigger. And sometimes it's just a whole new category that you can't define. And once I got out of that, then I could say, oh, Dollar Shave Club? Yeah, maybe that will work. And so now I don't even try to figure out if the business is going to work. I just figure out if the person's going to win at life. If I know they're going to win at life, I try to get to know them, make a small bet, watch for a year, 6 months, see if the metrics are going the right way, see if the founder is a good leader, see if they...
How can you tell if they're a good leader?
By the quality of the people they're able to recruit. I mean, it's that simple. If you're a great leader, you will hire people better than you around you. And I see it all the time. Just, I invest in somebody and nobody will go work for them. And they're just, they're a high performer themselves, but they can't get high performers around them. But if you can get these other high performers, so an investment we made in a company called Density, that Founders Fund and Mark Suster also invested in after we did, he's brought in somebody from Apple and then another top sales executive. And I'm like, wow, these people got 20 years experience and they're much better than the CEO at their verticals. And you're like, oh, that's really how it works. And if you look at Steve Jobs, he's the perfect analogy of this, which is what I call what got you here will not get you there. What got Steve Jobs where he is that he was an individual high performer. But he was an asshole to everybody, apparently, according to all accounts, in his young years. Then he got fired for being a dick to his employees and everybody around him and being uncontrollable. And then when he came back, the second act of Steve Jobs was, Eddie Q, you're good at what you do. Tim Cook, you're extraordinary at whatever this is called, supply chain nonsense. Johnny Ive, you're a better designer than me. And he just boom, 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 lined up all this extraordinary talent. And then he just came in and was like, good. Okay, this is really good. Let's do this one and do this, and then we'll do this one in 2 years and make that better. And he just was able to be a conductor, to be a coach, right? Those are the extraordinary performers, the ones who can put people around them and inspire them to change the world. Those are the people who have the outlier success. Individual performance can get you to a unicorn status, but to be a legendary company that becomes worth hundreds of millions, Jeff Bezos just hires people who are maniacal and want to innovate and change the world. And then you see this New York Times story where people are like, this is the worst, most horrible experience I ever had. And then there are like another group of people are like, I would never leave this company and work for any other person. I would rather die than not being working at Amazon. And I call that the 1 5-star phenomenon. There are some places that are just polarizing. Like if you go on Glassdoor and you look at Amazon, it's like, this is the greatest experience of my life. I owe everything in my life to Jeff Bezos and Amazon. And then there are people like, run, do not apply, do not go there. They hate humans. They are, and Netflix was another one. At Netflix, they terrorize their employees. They're like, every year we want you to reapply for your job. You're like, what?
Yeah, we're looking for someone who's 25 years old and has 20 years of experience.
But
we want work-life balance, and you'll work 120 hours a week in a 40-hour time span. Leave us with some final wisdom for founders like you see sitting before you right now, what these guys and gals can do starting immediately.
Most important thing is to be relentlessly focused on what's working. And the biggest leak for me as an entrepreneur was my probably undiagnosed ADHD. I don't know if I have it or not.
No, you do. Yeah.
Okay.
You're welcome.
All right, but it's a superpower. Okay. For me, superpower. Okay. It's huge. Okay. Which was, I would get some success in something and then I would build something else and then I would add it. And when I was at Mahalo, I kept adding things to the vision. And then there were like 3 things that worked really well. Our Q&A site, which eventually Cora became great at. We had a virtual currency, i.e. cryptocurrency, that rewarded people for knowledge inside of Mahalo before cryptocurrency and Bitcoin existed. And then I did YouTube videos, and we still make $15,000, $25,000 a month off the YouTube videos that we stopped creating 6 years ago. And we have a couple of channels with millions of subscribers. But I couldn't stay focused on any one of those things just because of my brain chemistry and my mind. And now with inside.com, I'm like, we make newsletters. The newsletters make money through advertising and subscriptions. We have 10 newsletters. Now we have 30. Let's get to 100 newsletters and let's triple the number of salespeople and don't do anything else. And then people on the team were like, but we could do a podcast for Inside AI. I'm like, not
podcasts aren't going anywhere.
We're not Everybody a podcasting company. Let's keep doing the newsletter thing. Let's keep focused on that. And if you look at Airbnb, I think that's the most wonderful example. People kept telling them, do cars, do experiences. And they were like, until we get Airbnb everywhere, let's just get every Airbnb everywhere. And Zuckerberg did the same thing. I remember talking to Chamath Palihapitiya about it. He was like, Jason, the reason we're not doing photos or groups or all this other bullshit, payments, donations, is because if we get Facebook localized in this region and we come up with Android support for these 4 phones, we add 50 million users. And if we do that, we make all users use the product 2% more. We should get the 50 million people on before there's a local competitor. So what I implore you to do as founders is to not make the mistake I make and others made and focus on when you strike oil, keep drilling. Because founders are like, oh shit, oil. And they're like, great, let's open an ice cream stand. It's like, what? Let's put another oil rig here and see if we can pull some more oil out. And be relentless about that. See how much oil you can pull out of the ground. It's a bad analogy because it's bad for the environment. But if you look at what Elon's done with Tesla, he just keeps trying to make a better car that goes longer and is cheaper. That's it. First car went 150 miles and cost $150,000. They said it went 200, but if you drive a Roadster the way it's supposed to be driven, it's going to go 125.
No one here has that problem.
Then the Model 3 just came out and it's $50,000 and it goes 320 miles. And when that $35,000 one comes out in 2 years, it's going to be a 400 or 500 mile one. And so don't take your eyes off the prize. Find something that works and just keep pulling that string, keep digging that hole and see how far it goes. And then there's always time for you to do other things, but stay focused.
Jason Calacanis,
Don't
thank
get
you
distracted.
so much. Thank you so much for your time, and thanks for coming out to the wilderness.
That was a great interview.
To hang out with all of us.
Really good job.